There we go. We're recording now. Okay. I will read the letter submitted from Treasurer Grodsky. It is found on the agenda, but share screen. All right. So this letter was submitted to me from the Office of the Treasurer. I will read it in full. Executive summary: the Treasurer supports the adoption of the proposed bill without amendments. The bill properly applies the sole criterion, and in the long run, the Senate should seek a strategy to entirely phase out stipends for officers other than the president. For background, the proposed bill appropriates stipends based on Section 311 of the Finance Code, revised as of the Fall 2023 Budget Act. Only positions which in their official capacities principally are responsible for performing a function of the university. The sole criterion for stipends allocation is vitality to university function. In other words, the number of stipends a position receives is expected to be proportional to the extent to which the proper performance of their duties is necessary for the completion of an official university delegated responsibility. Several legislative, executive, and judicial officers appeared before the Oversight and Advocacy Committee on February 7th to testify on their needs for stipends. Virtually all officers present argued that their positions required or deserved stipends, and some officers argued that the current sole criterion inadequately addressed financial need for some officers. Per Treasury Order 2023-03 and USR 105129, the total amount for appropriation for fiscal year 2025 stipends is $47,392.77. The proposed bill allocates $47,250, or 99.7% of the Senate-determined stipends total. This bill represents the most significant change to stipends since fiscal year 2021. Compared to the stipend rates previously codified in Section 311, this bill would affect an overall 8% cut in stipend spending. Compared to the stipends rate previously codified in Section 311, this bill would create stipends for the Honor System Outreach Coordinator and the Undergraduate Senate Finance Committee Chair. Compared to the stipend rates previously codified in Section 311, this bill would eliminate stipends for the Chief of Cabinet, previously referred to as Chief of Staff before the Undergraduate Constitution of 2023, the offices of Secretary, Director of State and External Affairs, and Summer Honor Court members, as they were termed. The Treasurer's position statement is as follows. The Treasurer advises that the Undergraduate Senate adopt the current proposed stipends bill without any amendments. The Treasurer believes that the list of officers allocated stipends under this bill represents all officers who are eligible for stipends outside of the judicial branch. If a continuing resolution, see Section 311, were introduced, the Treasurer would exercise his authority under Transitional Council Regulation 5 to define officers eligible for fiscal year 2025 stipend rates similarly to this list, removing the Outreach Coordinator and Finance Committee Chair, but adding the Summer Honor Court members. This support and all other editorial comments in this memorandum exclusively represents the position of the Treasurer of the undergraduate student body as an independent executive officer and does not necessarily represent the position of any other executive officer or the executive branch as a whole. The Treasurer urges that the Senate should plan to ultimately eliminate the allocation of stipends out of student organization fee funds. Nowhere in the authorizing text of the fee or the articles delegating responsibility to the Undergraduate Senate is it stated that remuneration for undergraduate student government officers is an appropriate use of the fee. While luminaries past and present have argued that stipends are needed to defray the opportunity cost that holding student government offices creates, this standard fails for the following reasons. First, virtually all notable positions in student government require a commitment of time and energy that forecloses other employment opportunities. It is entirely impossible for all of these positions to receive stipends without an even more expansive diversion of student fee funds from their intended use. Accurately predicting and quantifying need for remuneration is nearly impossible. From term to term, officers will not only vary in their personal need for compensation, but in the hours of work they conduct. Student government positions are not jobs. They are not defined as jobs by university human resources, and they do not have defined or even regular work hours. These, instead, are extracurricular activities, which students undertake in pursuit of their own enrichment and sense of duty. As an equitably and broadly applicable standard, defrayment of other potentially lost earnings is unworkable. The Senate should act with deliberate speed in assessing what leeway they possess in eliminating student organizations' fee-funded stipends. The Senate should also explore what other avenues exist for providing some remuneration to officers, such as private funding. Nonetheless, undergraduate student government must maintain strict standards for any sources of remuneration, as these should only be based on allocations by the Senate. For the time being, however, the bill proposed for fiscal year 2025 is a fair and conservative compromise between the pre-2023 stipends regime and ultimate goals. This was submitted by the treasurer. Thank him for doing so. But that being the only paper submitted to the Finance Committee, we will now open into a period of public comment. If you can please raise your hand in the chat, just like the student body president did, I will hear all of your requests for public comment in order. So we can begin with public comment from President Everett.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having this meeting tonight and for all the work that went into this bill proposal. I definitely still hold my same position in terms of it being very, very important to compensate the executive council, I believe now, for their work, and even the summer honor court officials as well. But just to speak to a broader point as well, if this bill were to go forward, I do think this poses a larger question about what equal oversight looks like for the roles that are now no longer stipended, including the Director of State External Affairs, the Secretary, and the Chief of the Cabinet. These roles still have to undergo the Senate Selection Committee, which I think that very largely concerns me about, equal oversight, because if these roles are not being stipended, I do no longer believe that the requirement to be reviewed by the Senate is necessary. So I just wanted to raise that point as well. But again, thank you all for the work that went into that bill proposal. And just wanted to really raise that if anything could be done there. So yeah, thanks so much.
All right, thank you, President Everett. Next, we have Ryan Kalo.
Hello all, I'm Ryan Kalo. I'm the Deputy Director of State and Local Relations, and I came here to speak about the stipend allocations. Since I've been in State and External Affairs, I've seen our Director, Miriam Khan, do work that is more than justified the stipend of $1,625 she received. I would invite the Senate and hold to be sure it has exhausted all of its options for including these positions in its stipend bill before cutting them out of it, especially considering that we now have positions who previously never even had a stipend receiving ones up to $4,000. There's more than enough to go around that is reflective of every position's work. All the work these positions do is invaluable, timely, and most importantly, costly to those that do them. I hope the Senate's decision on the stipend allocations is reflective of that.
All right, thank you, Ryan Kalo. We will now move to Michelle Liu.
Hi, I have a slideshow actually, so am I allowed to present that? Can I share my screen?
I would act in the interest of fairness and time that we stick to spoken word.
Got it. Okay. I'll put my slideshow in the chat anyways, if you guys want to look at it at your own volition. But I'll just be reading off of the slideshow, so I apologize. This might take some time, but I am also here to speak about stipend review. Let me share this. If you guys want to look at that, completely go ahead if you want to. But hi, my name is Michelle Liu. I am a Deputy Student Attorney General at the UNC Honor System. I have worked in the honor system for the past 3 years as a counsel, case manager, and a Deputy Student Attorney General. So I know the ins and outs of this system pretty well. I'm very familiar with the instrument and how the honor system functions. Fun fact, I went to the same high school as the guy who started the bottle flip challenge. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about stipends for the honor system. Specifically, if you see on my slideshow, The honor system does a lot for university functions. On the slideshow, there is a photo consisting of UNC's Student Conduct Office and NC State's Student Conduct Office. Because of the honor system, UNC actually has a much smaller OSC office than NC State, just because it's students taking on these university functions. So far in this term, the university has resolved around 161 cases. And this was a joint effort of 1 AG, 3 deputies, 9 CMs, and 18 councils. Currently, the CMs in this new stipend review bill are not going to receive stipends. However, I fully believe that CMs do a whole lot for this system. CMs are the ones guiding students throughout this process. We all know knowledge is power, agency, and autonomy. And CMs provide this to students by providing them knowledge, permitting them to make informed decisions. Simply put, empowered CMs equals empowered students. And then also, I most direly see that this stipend review bill doesn't give stipends to summer councils. As somebody who has been on the honor system and on the attorney general staff for almost 3 years now, I frankly believe that this is a very alarming and scary trend, just because if the honor system doesn't have summer councils, we aren't going to be able to process our summer backlog of cases. Every summer we get around our Due to the finals in the spring, the amount of cases that we get increases by over 200%. Last year, the cases reported in summer 2023 increased AG staff's caseload by 201.8%.
Sorry to cut you off, but we do have a time limit for public comment. So we will need to move to the next individual, but if you do still have more to say, you can raise your hand again and we can call on you after our cue.
Great, yeah. I just want to reiterate once again that
Or,
no stipends for summer councils is a very scary thing.
all right, thank you. Joshua Alexander, this is public comment for non-members of the committee. So do you have a public comment or a question of procedure?
If I could, I would wish to speak during public comment as
Ah.
a member of honor court.
As you are additionally a member of this committee, I would ask that you hold off until the hearing of the bill, after which you can provide your insight. The same insight there. Thank you. But that will move to Mariam Khan.
Hi, I'm on the iPad, so sorry if my face is like really up in your screen. It's beautiful though, so please enjoy it. For those of you that don't know, I'm the current director of State and External Affairs, and I spoke briefly at the last LNA meeting. I did read the bill, and I also read Logan's letter, and I just wanted to add in that I understand a lot of this is surrounding like university function. And I just think that the way that the state and external affairs position has been kind of thought of, and like the tasks that the state and external affairs position like takes on, I don't think it's been accurately represented. And to use the criterion that you all have like used for the bill, the executive branch of the student government and like what deems university appropriate function. The group is responsible for providing student body representatives to university committees, both standing and ad hoc, and other university groups as deemed appropriate by the chancellor. And one of the many functions, aside from like working with downtown Chapel Hill, as well as like working with the federal affairs office, is as the director of state and external affairs somehow, but like me as well as my deputy, but we serve on like the campus alcohol task force. Like, for example, we have a meeting on Wednesday where we're going to be reviewing alcohol policy stuff. And according to the UNC website, campus alcohol task force, the university will establish a campus alcohol task force, including 9 members, which must include faculty, staff, and students who by virtue of their profession's responsibilities, research interests, or campus involvement have relevant knowledge or experience regarding alcohol related issues. And then it talks about like how they will be like using their stuff to then make like relevant recommendations for the university and advise the chancellor, executive vice chancellor, and provost. And I do have an email from Aaron Bockenheimer that I can forward to you all too. So I just wanted to say that because I think again, I think maybe like the State and External Affairs Office is not being accurately represented as to like all of our duties, and I'm more than willing to provide more information. But yeah, and thank you, Andrew, for the time, and Max, thank you for the bill.
Right, thank you, Mariam. We'll now move on to Sophie Van Dyne.
Hey, first of all, I'm Sophie. I'm the chair of the BOE. First of all, I wanted just to say thanks for y'all's appreciation what the BOE does. Shows very clearly in the new bill. Then I'm going to take off my BOE hat for a second and just kind of speak as a member of the public, if that's all right. I have seen the work that Miriam Khan has done throughout this past year. I've been a witness to it. And first of all, I 100% agree with what you just said. Second of all, I worry what message this bill sends, this decision to cut out the Director of State and External Affairs stipend, what message that sends about the values of the Senate, and by extension, the values of the undergraduates at UNC Chapel Hill. Because UNC has a large impact on the communities that surround it. I would say most notably North Side. And the State and External Affairs Committee is the committee that's in charge of communicating with the world outside of our campus. And I worry that this bill shows that we don't care about supporting that work and making sure that we are listening to people who are not a part of this school. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Sophie. Next, we will move to Kendall Esk.
Yes, thank you so much for opening this up to public comment. My name is Kendall Eskew, and I am a case manager for the Student Attorney General staff. I've been working as a case manager since about this time last year, but I've been working with the staff since the beginning of my freshman year. I'm now a second year. As we all know, all of these positions are clearly underpaid and overworked. We're here to do, as much as we can for the university and do right by our fellow peers. The university honor system is incredibly unique in terms of honor systems, where we're upholding both the equitability and legitimacy of both the university and our student body, working together kind of as peers to resolve things when it comes to honor code violations. Firstly, with lowering DSAG stipends, I see firsthand every day how much work that Michelle, Whitney, Sid do, as well as Matthew. It's incredible to see how much work that people put into the honor system, especially on the Attorney General side. And it's critical to the university for us to continue functioning. In terms of summer staff, cutting those stipends completely is an incredible issue. We already have a reduced staff, an increased number of cases, and some of us I know have worked 20-hour weeks over the summer and in the school year. And that kind of labor is hard to watch go by underpaid, but it's even harder to watch go by free for the university, because we put a lot of value into that. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, I know that we're all trying to do our best with what we have. You guys have been given or have kind of allocated a low amount from student fees, and that's understandable. That is about the salary of maybe one university employee that's supposed to go to everybody. But I think as an honor system, our work is very critical. We do a lot for the university, and it's hard to see that go to the point where it's going to actually damage our work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kendall. Next up is Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Prusha. I am a case manager. This is my first full year working as a case manager, but I've been in the system for about 2 years now. I joined the Attorney General staff to support students in the community. I certainly didn't join it for the money, but that doesn't mean that I don't deserve to be paid. The Attorney General staff does invaluable work for UNC and deserves to be compensated rightfully so. It is not a club. It is not an extracurricular. It is a job, no matter what terminology you want to call it. Over the summer, I typically work 20 to 25 hours a week on minimum. According to the treasurer's report, the sole criterion for stipend allocation is vitality to university function. Summer councils and case managers are absolutely necessary for the completion of university delegated responsibilities, as the treasurer puts it. Without funding for summer staff or court, you are at risk to fundamentally cripple the honor system. The caseload during the summer is already remarkably higher due to fewer staffers, and without pay, fewer people will be able or willing to participate over the summer. Without summer staff, you would be creating a tremendous backlog that ultimately harms your constituents by taking away their right to a speedy hearing. I value the work of the Undergraduate Senate, but I urge you to value the work that we do in the Attorney General staff as well. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Emily. Next up is Jack.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for having me tonight, y'all. My name's Jack. I am a case manager in the AG staff. I've been in the system, sorry, for a couple of years now. I know Matthew's probably going to talk more about CM stipends, and that's something that Kendall and Emily have already kind of covered on. I want to talk mostly about summer staff today and kind of touch on some of the points that Emily brought up previously. I've only become a case manager recently, so a lot of my work in the system has been done as a counsel, and really where it started was in the summer staff. It's the same thing as Emily said. I never really got involved with the honor system because we're with the expectation that I'd be paid. It was work that I thought was really critical. It was work that I thought was really rewarding, and that's come in a number of ways, especially in summer staff. I think for all the reasons that Emily mentioned earlier, summer staff is particularly important, and it's particularly important that you see councils be compensated for that higher level of work that they're facing during the summer, during the school year. Being part of the honor system, particularly working on the work that the Attorney General staff does, is particularly time consuming. There have been weeks where I've had 2 to 3 hearings running in a row, and I've had to prepare statements and prepare what I'm going to say during those hearings and prepare questions. That work essentially multiplies during the summer. As my friends have mentioned earlier, reduced staff and an increased caseload means that we're essentially required to do more work per person. And I think, as all of you would understand, summer is internship season, improving the resume season, trying to find summer jobs to come back and be a little more flush with cash when you start the school year. Of course, I don't really think anyone, like my friend said earlier, got involved with the honor system with the expectation of being paid. But with how many stresses are already going on during the summer, and what the increased caseload is, first of all, you'll have staffers that will work in the summer, but it will be significantly reduced if we don't have money, the way that I see it. And that would become an issue.
That is time.
Pay summer staff.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move to the Attorney General.
Hi, Andrew. So I just want a clarifying question before I start real quick. So you mentioned like being able to raise your hand. Seeing as Michelle and I are at the end, can I just like continuously raise my hand to like get through my speech? I definitely have a lot to say tonight.
Within reason, yes.
Okay.
To save us with that, I motion to suspend the rules and extend speaking privileges indefinitely.
Is
Second.
Without objection?
Objection.
Okay. So with that, this is on the question of extending speaking privileges indefinitely. Is this to just the Attorney General or both the Attorney General and Michelle?
To both Matthew and to Michelle.
All right. Then with that, I don't believe any further members of the Finance Committee have shown. Okay. So Senator Fiore, as a reminder, a yes on the motion is to extend speaking privileges indefinitely. A no is to leave it at the 2-minute cap.
No.
No. Senator Wilcox?
No.
No. Additionally vote no. Senator Guskowitz,
Yes.
yes. Senator Wilson,
Present.
this is, or,
Can't.
you can abstain, but this is a motion to grant speaking privileges
Yeah,
indefinitely.
I'm aware of that. I'll abstain.
All right, cool. Vice Chair Alexander,
Yes.
yes. Senator Jessup, I'm sorry?
Yes.
Then by a vote of 3 to 3 to 1, that motion does fail, and the speaking limit is left at 2 minutes.
Point of
But
information. Hold on, I want a point of information.
Yes.
Was that third vote you declining it?
Hmm?
Where did the third no vote come? You?
So the noes were Senator Fiore, Wilcox, and myself. The yeses were Guskowitz, Alexander, Jessup, abstention, Wilson.
So I have a question. And this is convention. Does the chair usually vote unless it's a tie vote?
The chair in committee is permitted to vote as they wish.
Right, but conventionally, like,
I mean,
conventionally, are we always going to say, you know what, I want to be the tie vote to make sure something doesn't pass?
you can speak to convention, but procedurally, as the law and the standing rules lay out, the chair can vote.
Very well.
And without a majority, that does fail. So to the Attorney General, you have 2 minutes.
okay, but just before I start again, I would just like to clarify, I do have the ability to like re-raise my hand after I finish.
Yes, you do.
I promise not to talk for like 30 minutes, if that helps you at all. But
All right.
okay. Okay, well, so first of all, I think that a lot of people have spoken really beautifully about this bill today, and I really appreciate their insight. This is going to be a fiery conversation, and I understand that. But I think it's an important conversation to have, and I appreciate that you guys are giving me the opportunity to do so. So you may not know me, but I've been acting as the undergraduate student attorney general for the past 10 months. Before that, I served as a counsel and as a case manager during the school year and during the summer for 2 years. In my submission for stipend review, I stated that I would do the work I do for free. I trusted that Senate would recognize that as a dedication and passion for the work that my branch does. I suppose I was wrong in that. I expected to come to Senate and meet a friendly and cooperative environment that saw the value in the countless hours I and my staff put into the system we love so much. But I guess I was wrong in that as well. First of all, I was disappointed to see that the Attorney General staff did not receive summer stipends on this bill, despite the like continuous communication that we've gotten from like the statement that was read previously by Logan, but also from my email from Andrew, that specifically honor court summer stipends had been removed. I didn't see anything about Attorney General staff summer stipends. Shockingly, both summer stipend positions were removed, which highlighted yet again the fact that none of the people writing this bill even know the difference between the two branches. How can you all take money away from us when you do not even know what we do? As many times as I have tried to explain what exactly it is that my staff does and why it is so important, it seems that either too many people writing this bill were absent during those meetings or just simply did not pay attention. So I am now going to explain yet again what it is that we do. Speaking directly in my experience for the roles in question, I worked as a staff member for a summer. I worked on between 15 and 18 cases at a time the entire summer. A significant number, but relatively on par with most members of staff during each summer.
All right.
For context, I would say
is 2 minutes.
Okay.
So
I'll raise my hand again. Thank you.
all right. Since Michelle, okay.
Yeah, so I worked a significant amount, but for context, let's say the average case requires at least 3 meetings, which average around 30 minutes conservatively. Each case then requires a hearing, which range anywhere from 30 minutes to 10 hours. While 10 hours is not common, I can damn well assure you that is no exaggeration. Several members of my staff can attest to hearings at or nearing this length in their own experience. I've yet to mention the several hours of time spent writing statements and preparing verbal arguments. let's say, again, conservatively, to not overstep my bounds, the average case takes about 2.5 hours of meetings to prepare before the hearing. Then let's add in about 3 hours to write statements, 1 additional hour to prepare witness questioning and potential opening statements. So for those of you who are keeping track, we're at about 8.5 hours per case per counsel when you take into account that a hearing is, again, conservatively about 2 hours in length. We require counsels to maintain at least 3 cases a month during the summer. For about 3 months, we can estimate the total being 9 cases at a minimum. This is 76.5 hours or 6.375 hours per week as an absolute minimum. Most counsels work much more than that. For example, during the summer that I worked, I was on 9 cases as a counsel pretty regularly. And typically, once divided, summer stipends that we receive range from around $250 to $350 for the summer. That's about $3.26 an hour to $4.58, doing the absolute bare minimum. I calculated my payment to be closer to 70 cents an hour. It is often a struggle to find counsels who are willing to work over the summer. Moving on to being a case manager, this job requires literally constant supervision of cases for constant problems with students or reporting parties not responding along with a bevy of other issues. This position requires 2 to 3 meetings that last about an hour each, though they have been known to go much longer. Additionally, it requires reviewing statements, making phone calls about issues, and responding to emails constantly. I believe the amount of time invested into any given case is about that of a counsel, maybe slightly less to be fair, but around that. And it depends significantly on what the case is. They're also required to counsel the most difficult cases. They're also required to attend weekly meetings and much, much more. They are also required to do 6 full 8-hour days of training a year, about 24 hours of which is mandated by the university for all staff members, including counsels, not just leadership. And that happens during May after the semester ends. All in all, I would say my case managers work anywhere from between 10 to 25 hours in a week. You've already heard them attest to that. 25 is much more common than you would think. Most CMs, out of the goodness of their hearts, work during the summer as well, where their caseloads increase substantially. They receive about an additional 5 cases at a time. Despite a year of my efforts to get CMs the pay they deserve, not only has this committee decided to deny them this, but has also taken the liberty to remove the only pay they ever get as members of summer staff. I won't mention deputies and the AG position as much because I know that money is difficult to move around and that these positions are already getting a significant amount. I would still like to say that deputies working about an average of 20 hours a week do get paid about 81 cents an hour in this new bill. I will also say that the AG, which I have typically found, needs to work about 30 hours a week, potentially more some weeks. Lately, it's been more like 45 for me. The AG pay is about $3.20 an hour in this new proposal. Now, I do not expect any of the aforementioned positions to be paid like they deserve to be. I know that Senate has a limited amount of money to spread to many positions who do important work. I don't expect to even be paid minimum wage. But God damn it, the system saves the academic lives of students every other day who would have been expelled at another university. Sometimes we save their literal lives by getting them through a time that can be depressing and consuming. This is the work of the administration. It has been delegated to us directly by the chancellor. Please, God, tell me that you think that is not a position that the administration would have to fill otherwise. Please tell me that is not an official university position. We were already paid under $4 an hour for each of the positions that we've mentioned, but now you all wish to strip us of more. I can raise my hand again if you need.
You can talk as you need.
Thank you. I don't have too much more, but again, I do appreciate you guys all listening to this. I know it's a difficult conversation, but I know there are concerns about CMs and summer staff receiving stipends because they are not confirmed by Senate, and that this is also a factor with the court stipends. But that is frankly a ridiculous position. Firstly, I was assured by Logan that the funding bill passed in fall would not change the ability for either of these positions to be funded. The bill stated that student government officials may only receive stipends if they are confirmed. I believe that counsels and case managers do not need to be considered officers of student government, as the bill stated, and therefore do not need requirement to be confirmed to receive the stipends. They are specifically delegated to their responsibilities by me. They are my representatives in these cases. If the concern is Senate oversight, I would like to point out that Senate has the ability to confirm the AG and therefore has that direct oversight over these positions that are directly delegated by the AG. Third, if there is that much of a need to have every single position confirmed before the Senate to receive a stipend, would one of you please help me get them confirmed by the Senate? It may take 2 hours to confirm every member of summer staff and the CMs, but I'm quite confident my staff is more than happy to waste everyone's time if that is what it takes. Now, I understand from Logan's position that stipends are not a necessary part of student government. So you may ask, why is it important that we receive pay for something we would do out of love and passion for the work when many student organizations do not receive student pay? Firstly, it just seems fair to receive pay for doing work that the administration would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for other staff to do. That just seems fair to me personally. But secondly, we are constantly underrepresented by minority and low-income students. And a large reason for that is that we simply do not offer any kind of money that is remotely feasible for a student needing to pay for college. Unfortunately, though, low-income students are very highly represented in the cases we receive. And while we empathize with them the best we can, it is virtually impossible for a student who is barely scraping by to feel wholly represented by students who have the luxury to work for free. Those students are not being represented by individuals who can best empathize with them as they go through their darkest moment of college, or even their whole life up to that point. We are all failing that student if we cannot pay staff members enough to have them consider working over the summer or even at all. I know you all cannot see the work that we do because it is confidential and governed by an external document, but I hope you can understand how important it is and how it deserves more respect than what this bill is giving it. The honor system is the oldest form of student government at this university. It serves hundreds of students a year going through their worst time. It saves the university hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaried hours every single year. Try to tell me this work is not one that serves a university function. Maybe I'm completely off base, and maybe all the positions gaining money at the expense of my staff in the honor court in this proposal do the same amount of work and save the same amount of money. But personally, I doubt it. But hey, I have been wrong before, haven't I? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. We will now next go to Michelle Liu.
Hi, I'll be doing what Matthew's doing, and I'll just keep on raising my hand. But once again, I also want to state that this isn't going to be like a 30-minute presentation. Before I actually start talking more about this, I know Matthew has said a lot about stipends for CMs. I'll carry on from there, and I'll focus this presentation on stipends for summer councils. Before talking more about it, I also do want to acknowledge that the honor system members here today, the members of the Attorney General staff, we're not here to burn bridges. We understand that stipends are not a judgment on the perceived amount of work that we do. We understand that stipend remuneration can't just be a blank check given to student organizations. And we understand that the Senate faces rules and regulations that you must abide by. As members of the Attorney General staff and the honor system at large, we deeply understand the importance of rules and regulations in creating an equitable playing field. We understand these concerns and where the Senate is coming from. Stipends, like all aspects of student government, support the overall student body. I'm now going to talk about why giving stipends to summer council specifically would promote the mental health of this student body. So once again, that slideshow that I gave you is in the chat if you guys all want to look at it. Completely okay. I put a lot of statistics into there. I did some Microsoft data analysis, so I'm pretty proud of that. It would be cool if you guys could look at that because it's providing a lot of data about what the honor system does in some numerical bite-sized information so that it's a lot more digestible. But Based upon statistics from last year, the honor system had 51 new cases reported in summer of 2023. These are cases defined as reported after spring LDOC and before fall's FDOC. So we had 51 new cases came in. At the moment, this represents 32% of cases in the entire administration. So 32% of cases come in during the summer alone. These 51 cases were also on top of the 22 cases reported in the spring semester of 2023 that had procedures go into the summer. So in the span of the summer, AG staff was tasked with resolving 73 cases in summer 2023. That is a 231.8% increase in our caseload. Removing stipends for summer councils, like I said before, is a very alarming and scary thing to me, largely because already in the summer, even with stipends, we don't have that many summer councils. If we remove stipends for summer councils, we'll have an even smaller amount of summer councils. Slide 19 on the presentation gives you some chain of events. I put some nice graphic design skills into this, so it would be cool if you guys could look at that. But how it works is that if the honor system has a lack of councils, especially during the summer, students facing an honor system, an honor court hearing, students must wait longer until they receive their defense counsels. Defense counsels are the students engaging in the most direct, on the ground, and firsthand advocacy for accused students. They are the ones helping gather evidence, write compelling statements, and argue for students on behalf of them before the honor court. At other schools like UVA, if you're found guilty for violating the honor code, you receive 2 semesters of suspension. At UNC, your defense counsel helps put their best foot forward to make sure that a student has a best shot at a good sanction in their honor court hearing. But if the honor system has a lack of counsels, students no longer receive this advocacy. And hearings can't be scheduled until a student has an assigned defense counsel. Without a hearing date, a student will have a long and drawn-out process. With no hearing date, students don't know when their honor court hearing is going to be. Suddenly, one violation turns into a month-long process in which they don't know when it's going to end, and they don't receive any resolution or closure because of that. One of the honor system's main values in its operations is value of learning and reconciliation. If a student needs to wait 200 days to receive an honor court hearing because the honor system doesn't have the resources to give them a defense counsel, then they're not going to be learning from this process. Instead, a long and drawn out honor system process is only going to increase a likelihood of mental health concerns. From talking to accused students myself when I worked as a defense counsel, and from the reviews that the Office of Student Conduct gives the honor system, we know that many students already feel as if the honor system process takes very long. And that's largely because we have a long backlog and a small staff. But reducing stipends for summer councils would mean that we have an even smaller staff, and thus students won't be receiving the dedication and representation that they need. It also means that they won't get a speedy hearing. So simply put, more summer council stipends equals more summer councils willing to do the job. And more summer councils means that now we have speedier cases at a time when the honor system faces our longest backlogs. I know that there's been a lot of concerns about how stipends, need to be Senate approved or directly elected. I see 2 solutions for this. Like Matthew said, we can always make CMs and summer councils a Senate-approved position. We're completely open to that, and we see this as a path forward for collaboration. At the same time, CMs and summer councils are also selected, approved, vetted, and trained by AG Staff's cabinet, which is the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney Generals. These positions are Senate approved. So thus, by delegation, CMs and summer councils are approved as well by the Senate. And so, leaving off of this speech, I do want to put some final considerations into everybody's mind. I hope that it hasn't come off that I am whining about not receiving enough money. If you haven't mentioned, I'm a deputy student attorney general, and I haven't mentioned the stipends for deputies once. That's largely because I would do this work for free. I believe that this system does good work, and that this system allows students to gain a voice in a process that at other universities often unilaterally imposes sanctions onto you by the administration. I'm coming here and I'm saying these things out of a concern for the student body's mental health. If there are no summer stipends for summer councils, the honor system, simply put, isn't going to have enough summer councils to tackle our long backlog. This means that students facing an honor system case, who already are at the darkest moments in their life, aren't going to receive the diligent representation and speedy case hearings that they deserve. This is only going to push these students into more of a mental health hole. And I believe that, as members of the Senate, as members of the honor system, and I see members of the exec branch here, I think that all of us have the student body's mental health at the top of our heads. We think that that is one of the greatest reasons why we have a USG, to advocate for the student body and to make sure that student mental health concerns are being upheld. Giving stipends to summer councils directly helps students who are facing an honor court case, once again, get diligent representation and have their cases be resolved speedily. Nobody wants a long drawn out case in which they don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know what grade sanction they might receive. Heck, they don't even know if they can come back to the university in the fall. But having more summer councils would mean that these students can now have a speedier case. And that can only be actualized if these summer councils receive stipends. Since news of the bill for the stipend review, a member of the honor system has even asked me if the honor system would even be working over the summer if there wasn't stipends for summer councils. I think that if the honor system didn't work over the summer, that's a very scary thing once again. It means that students don't get speedy cases and they don't get the representation that they deserve. And so once again, I close this off by saying that as a deputy, I would do this work for free. I'm coming here not because I want to whine about more money. And I understand that, the university, there's a limited amount of money that can be given to everyone. And I know that stipends aren't a judgment on the amount of work that we do. But I'm coming here because I believe that summer stipends for councils would promote the mental health of the student body. And as members of USG, I believe that we have this common goal. And so we're not here to burn bridges. We're here to advocate for the student body. And with that, thank you. I'm going to put my email in the chat along with a Microsoft bookings link if anybody wants to talk to me more about this.
All right, thank you, Michelle. One moment. The next person is Sashank. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies.
You actually got it right on the money, and not many people do. So, thanks, Andrew. That was kind of cool. Hey guys, I promise I'll keep this relatively short. I joined a little bit late, and so apologies for that, and also sorry for the lighting. But my name is Sashank. I'm a case manager with the Attorney General staff here. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, I agree with everything that's been said by like Michelle and Matthew, and the other case managers have already spoken. But really, what I wanted to say is, I just want to talk about like the purpose of things, right? Like one, stipend is like, what is the purpose of a stipend? It's both like kind of like a reward for the people who are actually doing important work for the university, but also like it serves as like a sense of recognition from the university, right? That hey, like these are people who are doing work that is actually needed and out of their time. And even though it's nowhere close to minimum wage, like it's our way of, like, to be fair, we didn't apply for a job application, right? So it's the university's way of recognizing that we're doing some good work, right? And I feel like getting rid of that now is kind of getting rid of that sentiment of, hey, the university is recognizing our work. Not all of us are doing our attorney general stuff work for like free on the job experience. Like if I'm talking about personally, I'm not pre-law, as are some other members who are in AD stuff. This is not just like our free experience pre-law school sort of thing. Like we're trying to do this out of the goodness of our hearts, and we're trying, especially during summer, hearing so many cases. You already heard Matthew break down all the hours. Um, like while we're still working 9 to 5s or doing research and doing literally everything else in India, South Africa, or we had people going all over the place, of course, for summer, right? But we're still putting in the time to um, help the university where it needs the most help, in terms of helping out the student body, and that I think that's deserving of a stipend in its own right. But also the purpose of the other purpose I want to talk about is the purpose of this hearing right now, right? If there's any purpose to all of us coming in, spending our Sunday afternoon talking about the same issue for like what seems like hours and like a very long time right now, only for absolutely nothing to change or absolutely no thought to be given to what we're saying, I think that would be, as Matthew said, a waste of all of our time. Right. And so I guess as a parting statement, I would just really appreciate it if you guys could actually take into account what we're saying, as I'm sure you were planning on doing already, and try to really, I just understand like the purpose of what we're trying to talk about, and like why are we actually so I guess like intent on keeping our stipends, even though on surface value might seem not like it's not that much money. It's there's a whole lot behind it. As Michelle said, that it gives people incentive to come and work during the summer, which we need, and it gives us a sense of satisfaction that hey, the university actually recognizes that we're doing work that's needed. And if any of our words have any value, I'd really appreciate it if you guys could consider it thoughtfully. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sashank. Is there anyone here who has not yet spoken who would like to provide public comment? Well, if there is none, we will move into our one item of legislation tonight, that being USB 105, 144, a bill to appropriate funds for stipends. It is attached on the agenda, but of course, one moment and I'll share my screen. All right. So this, I guess the clerking hasn't been updated fully, but this is USB 144 or 105, 144, a bill to appropriate funds for stipends, presented by Senator Max Pollock. Max, or in his capacity as the chair of the Oversight and Advocacy Committee. Max, if you would like to present on the bill.
Yes, thank you. So the power to give stipends and the kind of
general process of stipends this year is found in the code in section 311. I encourage everybody to take a look at that. Page 123 of the copy of the code that's found on the Senate website. And in section A, it really outlines the kind of two main requirements for a position to be stipend, and that is that it is Senate approved and that it's performing a function of the university. Functions of the university are later defined in section K, which is what the treasurer cited, or subsection K of section 301, or 301, 311, which is what the treasurer cited in his thing, which is vitality to university functions, which are then defined in a memorandum handed down from university administration to student government, kind of delineating who is eligible to get stipends based off of university functions, which in general is student government elections, handling the fee, the allocation of the fee, and honor court. That takes us to the bill. A lot of these stipends are slightly changed from last year's because the total amount of stipends is $47,250, which is about $4,000 less than last year, which necessitated cuts in kind of different allocations. The president of the undergraduate student bodies allocated the same amount of funds as last year. This was after talking to kind of graduate student government about the way that their stipends worked. Other things are chair of the finance committee and outreach coordinator of the honor court are both stipended. These are both eligible positions that were not stipended under last year. Both doing very important work for student government, especially chair of the finance committee does a lot. The finance committee in general does a lot for allocating the funds, and the chair does a lot of the kind of back work of that process. The student attorney general and the chair of the honor court, unlike last year, are getting paid the same stipend, which is just an average of the two from last year. Deputy attorney general and vice chair are increased. Board of elections members are also increased just because of the kind of amount of hours that they put in to run elections, while the chair of the Board of Elections, which is additional to their stipend as a member of the Board of Elections, was not increased. And then the rest of the bill is just the kind of technical aspects of that. Positions that aren't stipend, again, are just ones that are not Senate confirmed. The code requires that they are Senate confirmed. This I believe to be instituted as a way to kind of get oversight over money. Again, this is student organization fee money. This is not, comes from the student activities fee, like all money given from student government. So it is not specifically for stipends, and I think we should all be kind of keep that in mind as we kind of continue to discuss this. I did feel that the outreach coordinator again does a lot of work in kind of helping to set up the judicial branch, and I felt that they would need to be stipended. Section 311 subsection B also discusses a form that's needed to fill out for stipends. As I put on this form, anybody that did not fill it out, their position would not be eligible for a stipend next year. This was to ask basic questions about the work and the way the work relates to university functions. No case managers or summer court members filled out that form, even though I asked the attorney general to send it to those people. So that is another reason why summer court members were not considered, because that was a requirement of the process this year. Yeah, that's generally how does anybody have any questions?
Am I allowed to ask a question? Sorry, I know I'm not on the committee, but
We would
I
have
extend
to
speaking
extend
privileges to Matthew.
for just this questioning period, the remainder of the meeting. What are the bounds on this?
Wait, are you asking me what are
I'm
the?
My
asking
internet's
Senator.
back. Do you mind repeating that?
I'm sorry? Oh,
Sorry, my internet's really unstable. Do you mind repeating that?
okay. Yes, is this for the remainder of the meeting, just this questioning period? What is the time frame?
For now, just this questioning period.
All right. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, then.
Can
without-
I, sorry, I'm trying to find an email. Can I get that, like,
Yeah,
somebody else can go before me?
Yeah.
I can wait for a second. Thank you.
Senator Alexander, your question for Chair Pollak?
Yeah, just regarding the form for honor court members and AG staff, was that a requirement that they had to provide that input from the DBB considered? Like, where is that statutory authority? I don't know if I misheard you there.
Yes, so the again, section 311 says, and I quote, that the Oversight and Advocacy Committee Chair shall make available to all relevant undergraduate officers of student government a form to enter requests for stipends for the following student government term. If there were no the way that this was this year was a form kind of talking about compensation and functions of the job. If there were no requests for stipends through that form, stipends were not considered.
May I ask a follow-up, Forbes, or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that statute you meant, that doesn't say that you can't consider, that's just like your discretion. Was that your discretion to not add funds because they didn't fill it? Or was that
a form that took at most 4 minutes to fill out? If people could not spend 4 minutes to kind of fill out a request form, I think that kind of represented a lot.
okay, thank you.
Although, again, the main considerations were, again, the two requirements for stipends being both Senate approved and university functions.
Am I good to ask?
Yes, Senator Jassel.
Lovely. So what was the extent of stipend review like? I know, obviously, I think your hands are also tied a little bit. Chair Pollock, just because O&A continues to have quorum problems. So could you like just briefly explain like what the whole process looked like?
Yeah, of course. So like I mentioned, there was the form and then the next O&A meeting after that, giving people plenty of time to, and a couple of reminders to fill out that form, was the O&A testimony hearing. And then through conversations with various members of student government and members of O&A, and specifically after that hearing, I kind of came up with the numbers that you see before you. A lot of it is, again, based off of testimony at that stipend review hearing.
Yeah. And so just a quick like part B to that. I'll ask another question about the form. If we've already told honor court members that if they're not approved by the Senate, we can't stipend them, why the hell would they fill out a form to get stipend?
I can't speak to the decision making of other people.
Well, like you already said it was your discretion, so speak to your decision making. How in the hell that makes any sense?
I was simply following what the code says.
All right. What? No. That's the code says it was your discretion. I want to know about your discretion.
Again, I can't speak for other people.
Your discretion was to not consider them for a form.
I encourage.
Point of order, decorum.
Please do be respectful of all senators. This is a period of questioning. We will enter into debate and discussion following questions. So please.
So, point of information, I asked a question about his discretion, and he said he could not testify to other people's discretion. So my question was never answered. I was trying to reiterate that.
All right.
Again, I sent an email to the Attorney General encouraging him to get people to fill out that form.
All right. Now Speaker Gary.
Yes, Chair Polly, could you speak to your reasoning as to how you arrived at the numbers for each position they're being paid? Given that for some of these positions, I think they're seeing a decrease. Like I see that the Speaker of the Senate is receiving about $170 decrease. While for some other positions, I think they're receiving a small increase, or receiving a increase as the treasurer of the undergraduate student body being seeing their pay double. So if you could speak to some of that decision making.
Yeah, so like I said, the president's stipend is the same from last year. Vice president, treasurer, speaker, and chair of the finance committee, I want to have kind of all equal. I believe that they do kind of equal work relating to university functions that are all very important positions. With vice president and speaker getting a little bit more just because they are the relative heads of their branches. Student attorney general and chair, I already mentioned, is the average of those two stipends from last year. Outreach coordinator is a new stipend, and since they do less work directly related to university functions than the attorney general or the honor court, they are paid less. Deputy attorney generals and vice chairs have been increased just to kind of again show just the kind of level of work that they put in based off of my experience at the stipend hearing on the O&A committee. Board of Elections was increased again because of the things mentioned at that stipends hearing, and chair of the Board of Elections, because that is an added bonus because they do also get paid as an undergraduate member of the Board of Elections. I did not feel like it needed to change, if that answers your question.
All right. Question from the Attorney General.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I would just like to clarify, you mentioned earlier that you instructed me to send this form to members of my staff. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
I know this is questions based, but can I please share my screen because that is an outright lie. Can I please share the email just to clarify what exactly communication I've received?
Again, this is a period of question and answer. Public comment is over. If you would like to make a further appeal to extend speaking privileges during discussion, you're more than welcome to do so.
And then I would also like to, could you remind me one more time what exact phrase from the student code you're referring to in section 311 that denies people stipends if they have not been confirmed by the Senate?
Yeah, it's section A, subsection A of section 311. Do any position which is subject to undergraduate Senate confirmation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are there further questions from members of the committee? Michelle, I see that you do have your hand raised, but
Am
you're
I
incapable
allowed
of
to
this
speak
committee.
now, or is that not permitted?
Public comment period is over. We are in presentation of the bill for the committee. So at this time, it is senators and other members of the committee only.
I motion to Michelle.
I'm sorry.
For the remainder of this period.
Can you make
Yes.
that motion again? Yes.
Yes, I motion to speaking privileges to Deputy Attorney General Michelle for the remainder of this period.
Second.
Objection. There was an ample public comment period as well as a period during the stipend review hearing for these questions and concerns. So I object.
All right. That will enter into voting procedure. Senator Fiore.
No.
No. Senator Wilcox.
No.
No. I will vote no. Senator Guskowitz.
Yes.
Senator Wilson.
Yes.
Senator Alexander,
Yes.
Senator Jessup.
Yes.
All right. With that, the motion to extend speaking privileges for this question passes.
Point of information. Does this not require a motion to suspend the rules?
I add that, sorry, I should have added that prefix, but yes, motion to suspend the rules and extend
A
speaking
motion to
privileges to.
suspend the rules requires two-thirds vote, I thought.
Okay, with that, yes, it is a simple majority. 2/3 does not, so the motion fails. Thank you, Treasurer Grodzki.
Very well.
Senator Jessup. Oh. Did you still have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot I was muted. So am I not even allowed, since we're still in the question period, am I not even allowed to ask the Attorney General what his email said? Or he said he had an email. We didn't give him privileges. Am I allowed to ask him a question?
We are currently in questioning for Chair Pollock. If the Attorney General would like to share this information with you and you would like to make a point of discussion following Q&A, you are welcome to do so.
I was just thank you, Andrew.
Are there further questions for Chair Pollock? Yes, Vice Chair Alexander.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up, Chair Pollock, if just this like let's just like because obviously the Attorney General, I think he's trying to say that he didn't get the form, but even if he got the form, he sent it. Could you still have allocated money to the summer staff or whoever, even if no one filled out the form on their behalf, or was that like out of your hands?
Need money to positions that are not Senate approved. It is student government money. It is not student government money, it's actually student money. And the Senate is the ones that decide who and which organizations, and in terms of stipends, which individuals get student fee money. Therefore, like, unless summer members were Senate confirmed, which I have not heard anything to say that they are, they would not be eligible to receive stipends under the code.
Wait, so if that's the case, then why were they sent a form in the first place? If you knew you couldn't give them money.
I sent a form to everybody that received a stipend last year, just to again hear requests and gain information as part of the stipend review process. I felt that it was a good starting point if we're reviewing stipends to review the stipends from last year.
Got it. All right, thank you.
All right, are there further questions for Chair Pollock on his presentation of this bill? All right. If there are no further questions, we will move into discussion. Are there points of discussion on the floor at this time? The speaker.
Thank you, Chair Forbes. As per usual, I have many thoughts, but will do my best to keep them as brief as possible. I would first like to call the committee's attention to an important fact, which is that this money is not just created in out of nothing. It is from student fees paid by your fellow undergraduate students. And that fee that they pay is called the student organizations fee. And the fee text says, and I quote, that the student organizations fee supports the growth of student organizations and the mission of each unique group. Now, there are people who would argue that under that fee text, stipends are not permissible. I am not one of those people. But I would like to point out that there is legitimate debate and discussion as to whether or not stipends are something that should exist as a concept in its entirety. I would argue that like we've been doing stipends for a while now, and that like if they weren't allowed, the university would have stopped us some time ago. But as the treasurer has said, he does not believe that stipends should exist, and I do not think that he is the only person in student government with that opinion. I was recently informed by a former speaker of the undergrad senate, Stephen Wright, who is now the GPSG treasurer or VP of finance or whatever, that in the 101st senate, so that would be about 3 years ago, there was a proposal to reform stipends. And this proposal was highly controversial for a number of reasons. Principally because there was a large contingent at the time, led by the then R&J chair, that wanted to kill stipends entirely. That was their negotiating stance. No stipends. They were not open to any other arguments. And this didn't end up going through for like a lot of complicated political reasons unique to the time period. And I say this to provide some context as to how we got to this situation. There's some other context I want to provide as well. This idea of stipend review was created by the ONA chair in the 103rd Senate, Pauline Lodkar. This was not a required process and has certainly never been a required process. It was something that she invented on her own initiative because she wanted to reform the stipend section of the code, section 311, because it was woefully out of date and needed reform. And the idea, like her sort of scheme there, was to take a couple months, interview people who got stipends, interview people who some people think should get stipends, kind of get a sense of what people are doing, and then use that information to create a stipends bill. The interviews were done actually around this time 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now. What was it, 2 years? Whatever, a couple years back. But the stipends bill was never written, was never proposed. So she did it again the next year in the 104th Senate. Interviews were conducted, bill was never proposed. And like this has been a perennial issue with stipends, is that there is always a desire to change them. But when it comes around to actually putting pen to paper, there is a lot of disagreement, and there is, as we see tonight, there is a lot of varying opinions that are basically impossible to balance. However, what did change since the end of the 104th Senate is last semester, we changed section 311 and required that there be an annual review process for stipends. Now, why did we do this? It's because our treasurer, Mr. Gradsky, and the Student Supreme Court have held that standing appropriations are not compliant with viewpoint neutrality, and that every year they have to go through some objective process. And this is the process that we have invented, essentially, is that in the spring semester, the ONA and finance committees work together to put together a stipends bill. And if we don't pass the stipends bill by, I forget what the arbitrary deadline is, then the treasurer sets the stipend rates for next year.
As a bit of information, it's 4 weeks prior to the first Tuesday in April, which would be March, the first Tuesday in March, which
is a point of information that is not accurate either. That is an abbreviation at best.
Look, there's a deadline. Point being that is the process we have created. There's some other historical context I want to provide. As I have been in the process of archiving decades of documents, I found a lot of interesting things in old versions of the student code. First thing is that in 2010, this was who was stipended and how much they were paid. The student body president got $300 a month. The vice president got $200 a month. The treasurer got $200 a month. The secretary $125 per month. The student attorney general $200 a month. The honor court chair $200 a month. The honor court outreach coordinator $125 a month, and that was it. That was every single person who got a stipend. In 2016, that was actually reduced. Only the student body president, vice president, treasurer, honor court chair, and attorney general received a stipend. And it was the student body president received $300 a month, with all other positions receiving $200 a month. The idea that like a lot of positions receiving stipends is very recent, as in 2021 recent, the last time that stipends were seriously revisited. And in 2021, we were left kind of with the current version of Section 311, the only meaningful change being when then Senator Gradsky introduced stipends for Board of Elections members. I give this context to the committee to say that the stipends process, the people who receive stipends, that has changed much over the preceding 10 years. And it is always going to change as there is limited funds and a lot of competing ideas as to who should get stipends. Also because the positions that we have change. That's just the nature of student government. And that we shouldn't feel committed to any one particular scheme of how stipends should work. I will note that not a single Senate position up until 2021 received a stipend. Not a single one. I will note that in the current stipends bill, I think it's 45% of stipend funds are going to people within the honor system. Like these numbers all change over time as different senates determine which positions need stipends. I also want to briefly say, in terms of like the criteria we use to evaluate stipends, that the criteria of university function was settled on as a way to like provide some standard. I have my opinions on this standard that like I don't think it's great, but like there are some standards I think the committee should reject. The amount of work a position does should not be used as standard. It is just not a fair metric at all. Like I do 10 times as much work as my predecessor. It doesn't mean I should be paid 10 times as much. Like, and this is just kind of how it is for every position in student government. I also think that stipends should not be seen in any way as like a standard, like the Senate's like judgment value as to whether or not your position is important. There are tons of important positions that do not receive a stipend, like plenty that historically have not, and until recently did. That's just not a good way to view stipends. Stipends, like the only argument that I ever bought about stipends is that stipends exist as a way to basically like compensate you for not being able to get a part-time job. And like even recently, I have heard persuasive arguments from many that is not also a good way to think of stipends. And I'll say this entire process has made me much more negative on stipends. I don't think there will never be a bill that is put forward that anyone will find remotely acceptable. And there's never going to be a way to compensate all the positions which I think are deserving of stipends. Like, if it is going to cause this much acrimony year over year to discuss stipends, it is perhaps better that we end them to save everyone the grief. And those are my thoughts at this time. Thank you, Chair Forbes.
Senator Jessup.
Thank you, Chair Gary. That was actually very information. I think, and I just want to speak broadly. I agree actually with a lot of the sentiments that Speaker Gary said. Like if they are going to be an issue, maybe an avenue. However, I have a problem because the honor court specifically is in student hands. We specifically put it in student hands. That way students can have a voice in how like our own processes work with the honor court, but also to save a pretty dime instead of paying other people. So like we can, like feasibly, is there really a route here that we could eliminate stipends in the future, but still have a student-led honor court? And I think that's honestly, I could care less. I could, but like that's my main focus here today because I think we're only, I don't know what the statistics is. There's 2 or 3 like honor courts in whole US that's student-led. And I don't think it's fair that we can just not hire faculty members here to save a pretty penny and then proceed not to stipend the kids who do the same amount of work. Now, granted, it's distributed among other people, but like cumulatively the same amount of work. So I would love to hear other ideas of how like we can incorporate that. Because I do agree, like if stipend review is going to be an issue, I agree with the sentiments that Treasurer Grotsky laid out and Speaker Gary laid out. But I think that like that's sort of unique in that sense. So I'd love to hear like ways forward with that.
All right, thank you, Senator Jessup. Senator Fiore.
Thank you. So I'm going to begin by telling you all how much I appreciate the effort you put into student government in your respective positions, as well as the intentions that brought you here tonight. You all clearly care about the services you perform and the students you represent. I agree that the stipends process is complex, and I support the treasurer's stance, as well as Senator Jessup's stance, that the Senate should eventually plan to eliminate stipends altogether from the student organization fee funds, given that nowhere is it stated in the fees authorizing text, nor the articles that granted its responsibility to us, that this is an appropriate use of the fee. In the meantime, however, we are tasked with figuring out the fairest way to allocate stipends whose future is unsure, stipends that are complex and difficult to qualify for people whose efforts are also difficult to quantify, and above all, stipends that simultaneously align with our code. And this bill is it. To all those who made public comment, as well as Senator Jessup and my concerned colleagues on the Finance Committee, we appreciate the honor system very much, which is why we gave them 45% of the funds under this bill. However, the honor system summer stipend is a novelty and does not have a deep-rooted precedent, as the honor system did not receive a summer stipend before fiscal year 2021. Furthermore, it is not feasible to base stipends off of an hours per week formula that students in these positions put in, as that would far exceed our allocations, as I'm sure many of you saw by the public comments tonight. Finally, I want to emphasize the speaker's point that this is not a representation of what we do and do not value within student government. You all do very important work, and we are grateful for it. This bill is merely a reflection of the code's definition of university function, which is why I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fiore. Vice Chair Alexander, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Chair Forbes. Yeah, overall, I think my biggest issue with this bill as it stands is simply the summer staff stipends for both honor court and attorney general staff. Even as Treasurer Grodzki, who is more in support of removing stipends, notes it would be more in his view agreeable that they should receive some sort of stipend or money for this bill. It's simply just like if we're like Speaker Gary said, we can pick the criteria we want to use. And if we want to stick with the current one of university functions, they surely satisfy that, both the court and the attorney general staff. And we could also just look at compensation or how essential they are in general. Even if you ignore the work that they put in general, it's just the work is essential to what the to university functions. The honor system is like a vital part of that in the first place. And we can see every day how the Office of Student Conduct really is dependent on these students who put in so much work to ensure that we can handle these cases. Speaking as a member of the honor court, I know that the work that is put in, not just by honor court members, but also by attorney general staff, who I think have a higher workload than honor court members. And it just seems unnecessary to remove the stipends for both the honor court and the attorney general staff, especially given some positions are receiving much larger increases in pay. Or at least some increase. While I do respect the fact that a lot of money is going to this staff currently, we obviously have seen in the summer how there's just such a shortage of staff, and to compensate them some way for serving such an essential function to the university would be ideal. Obviously, even if we cannot provide them adequate funding, at least something would be better than nothing. And I just don't see a way for this bill to stand correct. I think an amendment must be passed to provide them funding. We can obviously discuss the details of where that money would come from the allocations, but I just think fundamentally we have to start by looking at increasing funding for the honor system, for the summer staff especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alexander, the treasurer.
A few weeks ago, many, if not most, of the people here attended the hearing of the Oversight and Advocacy Committee hearing, during which I said as follows: I expect that in 2 weeks or a few weeks, we're going to come together again to hear a bill, and people are going to tell me, I would like this to be stipended. I would like that to be stipended. And I said, don't say that. Tell me I would like to reduce this person's stipend and give it to this person. I am very frustrated at the moment, and have become increasingly frustrated over the course of this meeting, on the grounds that people are asking for things and not telling me where they would like it to come from. This is a zero-sum game here. To be very brutal, this is a zero-sum game here. It is certainly true that the honor system, that it's certainly true that the honor system, if that is the main thing we're discussing here, if that the honor system performs a university function. There is no doubt about that. The honor system in this bill receives almost half of all of the stipends this year. First of all. Second of all, we can't then give stipends to every single person who works for honor system, no matter how important, like in the aggregate, they may be. I perform a university function, and sometimes my chief of staff will help me respond to emails. And it is certainly vital that the people get responses to these emails in order to be connected with their funds in order to perform this university function. But I think it would be absurd to give my chief of staff a stipend, because you just can't give a stipend to every single person whose fingers touch whose fingers touch a university function. I want to be very clear, and just to go over some of the process that the speaker briefly touched on. Here is where we go from here. This is the bill. It could be amended. I would urge against amendments. We're pretty much right up against the wall in terms of how much money is allocated for this. I would strongly, and I think the rates are fair, and I do not believe there is anyone in this who's currently allocated a stipend who deserves any less than they're given in this bill, based on the criterion. If the Senate fails this bill, there will be an opportunity to adopt a continuing resolution. That continuing resolution is one where per Treasury, Transitional Council order or Regulation 5 states that I then determine/interpret what the FY24 equivalent rates would be. So what that will mean is that it will basically be the same, as I mentioned in my memorandum. Two people won't get stipends. I think there would be summer honor court in there. But other than that, mostly people will just be receiving less than they currently are. I think that is at best unsavory option. And then the third possibility is that the Senate, by the first Tuesday of April, fails to adopt a stipends bill, in which case I want to be very clear, absolutely nobody gets a stipend. And as I've also made clear, I would be thrilled by that. Or at the very least, I would not be upset about it. So I think that would be fine, but other people don't. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I think this is a compromise. No one is getting everything they want, and that is how you know that government is working, is what I will say. I very much value the work that some members of the Honor Court perform. I know everyone on this committee does. I know we very much value the work that case managers do. But we cannot get endlessly labor intensive and continue to provide stipends that mean anything. It's just not workable. It's just not workable. And I ask that this committee consider this with sobriety, with a cold, calculating hand here, and not succumb to pathos. Because nothing good will come.
Thank you, Treasurer Grodzki. Senator Guskowitz.
First, I do want to acknowledge that I thank everyone for this discussion that we're having today. I think this is a very important discussion that we're having, and I appreciate everybody's level-headedness and everybody's understanding that this is an important bill that we're discussing currently. Regarding previous commentators' comments and during this discussion period, I do think there are some certain how should I say it, measures that we can do that are not just the middle, or that can be more into the middle ground than what they already are. I later into this discussion, I don't mind proposing a few things that I think would be more amendable and makes this bill much more easier to swallow for many people here, because quite frankly, I think there's a sense of Schadenfreude not allowing people to allow this university's very strong student government to not function in the future, to not allow a sense of importance that this university deserves. The student body is very strong here, and I think not allowing or incentivizing future people in the future to have this opportunity to be compensated for their much hard and much deserved work, compensated for deservedly compensated for the hard work that they've done. If the chair would allow, I do have this image that I would like to share to the finance, if that's okay. I can either send it in the chat or I can present my share screen.
If you can post it in the chat, please.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. I apologize. 1 second. One second, sorry. I was not expecting this. Technical difficulties, I apologize. Okay, everybody should see the Word document that I just put in the chat, if you can. In this proposed bill, there's one position that is doubling the amount of funds that it has gotten. Another one is increasing by 4,000%. Another.
We aren't able to see the image.
Is being drastically cut. Sorry, let me resend that.
Is he frozen for anybody else too?
Yes. Oh. And he's gone. Okay. Well, I hope he comes back soon, but in the meantime, Vice Chair Alexander, I'll let you speak.
Yes, thank you. So I think to respond to Treasurer Grodzki, as again, I respect his thoughts here, that first, I agree that this is gonna end up being a compromise bill, regardless of if there are amendments or not. But I think that in the spirit of compromise, we can still at least attempt to compensate the summer honor system staff in some way, preferably through allocations. And if we have to reallocate funds, I have been conferring with people throughout the student government to see what would be best, but I definitely think that possible ways to start could include by removing the increases in certain positions, or just in general reallocating funds from positions that have just received a stipend. And obviously I'm open to changing my position here, but I think at least from last year it was about $4,000 for AG staff for the summer, 4,000 for the honors court. And we can see that the finance chair, for example, newly received about $4,000. And while I would not object to them receiving a stipend, I think that we could start by reallocating funds from positions that have just received a stipend for the first time. Just disregarding precedent, it still would make most sense to reallocate funds from them. Again, the spirit of compromise. And I would be open to finding other sources of funding. It's like in my first discussion, I try to really emphasize that I don't have a specific preference for where the money would come from, but I just think that there are ways that we can reallocate this. It's not as if there's nowhere for the funds to be taken. And if we can even get at least $4,000 for the honor system, if not for both the AG staff, and then 4,000 for the honor court for the summer, it would at least mean something for this bill. And I think an amendment in that direction could be very helpful. So I don't know if other senators have a position on where the funding could come from, but that definitely could be a start. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alexander. And I messaged you privately about this, but to the full committee, as a point of information, per section 511 of chapter, is it Title 2, Title 1, of the undergraduate code, as a member of the honor system, you will not be able to vote on referral of the bill or amendments. Just putting that out there now.
Point of clarification then?
Yes.
Am I still able to participate in the discussion? Like, there's still recusing the voting,
Yeah,
but
you're more than welcome to discuss just on procedural motions.
Understood.
Yeah, of course. Senator Jessup.
Once again, Treasurer Grotsky made really good points, and he is right. Like, I think there's obvious efforts here to try to distribute money in a way that I don't know if the right term is the way we can sleep, but I would love to see a little more give here. And I'd like to say too, Chair Forbes, I know you do a lot of work. So I want to preface what I'm about to say. I've seen the hours, the late hours that you do, the week of finance every year, the countless hours. However, am I allowed to ask you your thoughts on this, whether you think that 4,000 number is appropriate or not?
In terms of the numbers proposed, I do believe that the Finance Committee Chair should receive a stipend, since that is consistent with the Senate's one university function that it has been allocated. As for the 4,000 number in general, my personal conviction to any proper number is not based on an individual position, but rather the idea that these positions of Vice President, Treasurer, Speaker, and Finance Committee Chair are all relatively equal, so as to provide that equality.
Sure. Also, Chair Pollock, motion, do I have to suspend the rules if I want to give him speaking privileges or no?
Yes.
Okay. I motioned, he wants to speak on this, so I want to suspend the rules and grant speaking privileges to Chair Pollock.
Second.
Without objection.
Thank you. Yeah, so the 4,000 number is again because the workload, not that workload matter, but the kind of university function workload of the finance chair in the student organization's finance process is to me the same as treasurer, with then vice president and speaker of the Senate getting they all do a relative equivalent amount of work related to university functions, with vice president and speaker of the Senate getting a total of $30 more just out of respect to their positions as heads of those relative branches. So that's how that number was arrived at.
Chair Forbes, do you want me to put my hand down and then follow up after everyone else has asked questions or talked about something? Oh, I think you.
Sorry. Yeah, out of fairness for all those who wish to speak, yes. Senator Wilson.
Okay, I'll keep my remarks brief. So I'm looking at the document here with previous stipends and in the proposed bill, and I will say that just looking through them, I know we had discussed previously in this meeting about sort of precedent where there wasn't a longstanding precedent of summer staff getting a stipend fund. So I am a little curious how some of the stipends in the proposed bill are they're increasing from 0 in positions that hadn't previously received stipends. So I'm curious what balance exists between whether there's been a historic precedent for giving stipends to certain roles versus the university function part of that. I'm sorry if I'm phrasing this as a question, but I'm just saying that's my thoughts on this, where we're kind of trying to balance a lot of different things. And as Treasurer Grodzki's been saying, the sense I get is that in discussing stipends, it's messy. Nobody's going to get exactly what they want. And I do understand the general consensus that we should have university function roles that are the most important for university function getting priority.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. Senator Guskowitz. Are you able to speak? If not, we can move to the treasurer and come back to you.
I would like to be clear that I don't think. Oh, it is. Trace, are you? Senator Gaskowitz.
Yes, I'm here. I apologize. I'm continuously having to speak on this bill. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get my point across before, but I would like to continue my thoughts as far as that goes.
Yes.
I agree with what Senator Wilson just said, and I think we should question about actual roles and how much of an influence that student government has in our everyday lives on campus. And I would argue that the finance compensation and finance allotments is not nearly as important as the attorney general and the honor system. They save the university millions of dollars every single year. And I think it is very disingenuous and very wrong for us to consider this body and ourselves as being way more important and connected to the student body than what the honors court and what the attorney general system are doing. And I consider this as being one of the most foundational aspects of the UNC undergraduate government. And I think that they should be more than 50%, honestly, in stipends, because quite frankly, they do more of connecting to the student body than anybody else in this room. And I really think that we should really evaluate this because they are spending hours and hours on end. I previously spoke to the Attorney General a little bit ago, and I asked him, how many pages of work do you write? He said this year alone, he's written at least 180 pages of work. 180. That is more than any of the finance. And that is more, I guarantee you, way more with just the assistant attorney generals and the honor court chairs and all the other honor people in the honor court system. It is they spend so much time on this. And going back into the previous comment sections, like it's only reinforced by what Grace Habel says in her discussion about how other positions at other universities for what they're doing are salaried at $60,000 and more. And for us to barely give them not even $1,000 each is very telling because they do a lot. I yield my time, but that is my thoughts on the situation.
Thank you, Senator Guskowitz, the treasurer again.
I want to make I have never served as finance committee chair. I have served as treasurer for 2 terms, and I've served on the finance committee. So I have a very good understanding of what the workflow and responsibilities of the finance committee chair look like. The finance committee, the treasurer has been stipended for a very long time. The finance committee chair has not. And that is utterly absurd. It has always been utterly absurd that many positions have received a stipend while the finance committee chair has not. The finance committee chair performs hundreds of hours of university function work over the course of one term. And that is not, I'm not kidding. I would estimate they probably handle maybe 100 emails a week from student organizations. Senator Jessup, you say that, and I don't mean it all to be combative. I just want to talk, or not Senator Jessup, sorry, Senator Guskowitz. You talk about, you argue that what we do is not as important. Just to speak a little bit objectively, and again, I don't diminish. I am someone who just loves student self-governance, and for that reason, I have an incredible respect for honor systems.
Point of order. I did not say that what we do is not important. I said it's not nearly as important as the honor. And that is a very important statement, and you're mischaracterizing what I said.
Thank you
very much.
I apologize for that. That was not my intention. That is essentially what I meant. Just speaking a little bit objectively here, though, the Undergraduate Senate Finance Committee chair arranges hearings, they manage records, they communicate with hundreds of student organizations, representing thousands of students across campus, compared to honor system, which, and again, I think this is incredible and very important, but that's about 150 students cases processed this term by comparison. I'm not trying to compare, but I think to argue that honor system is just obviously more important is quite absurd. I do not it is vital that I would argue, frankly, that except for the undergraduate president, the finance committee chair should have the second highest stipend. Frankly, and it is the rectification of a long injustice, frankly, based on what I view as one era's executive bullying of the legislative branch, that this bill finally contains a stipend for the finance committee chair. Efforts to lower it are appalling. It should be no lower than it is. It shouldn't be no lower. It should not be significantly lower than the stipend of the treasurer or the speaker or the vice president. I guarantee that the university function fulfilled by the finance committee chair is at least as vital as that performed by any summer honor court member. And that is not to say that summer honor court members don't perform a university function. They do. But we have run out of money in this bill. There is no more runway. Everyone deserves the amounts here. No one deserves less. And we're out of money. I think, frankly, this conversation has become very tired, and I apologize if I have helped to wear it out. And I just want to emphasize that the alternative here is not some rosy, we should not be viewing the alternative to something very, very similar to this bill as something much rosier where everyone is happy. But very much one where I am happy because nobody gets stipends. And maybe that is a harsh way of putting it, but like I very much think that this bill as it stands really needs to be passed if the stipends regime is to be kept.
Thank you, Treasurer Grodsky. The Speaker.
Thank you, Chair Forbes. I had not planned to speak more than once in this committee meeting, but I feel obligated as the Speaker of the Senate to come to the defense of the Senate. To paraphrase Speaker of the House of Commons John Bercow, I am a partisan for this House. There are three higher order delegated authorities to student government in my mind. The trustee seat is one of them, the student-led and student-run honor system, and the appropriation of student fees by the undergraduate senate. One of the first actions that students took on this campus was to tax themselves, to pay for student activities. And that is a tradition that we have carried forth for over 228 years. It is integral to the way that not only student government functions, but this entire university is structured and how it operates can be derived from the fact that the students chose to pay student fees, and that the university is aware of this. When you talk with the university administrators who deal with student fees, they are cognitively, they are so aware of the fact that it is the students who themselves voted for most of those fees. And we can choose to not. We can choose to pass referendums repealing them and lobby the Board of Governors to have them taken away. And we have done this. Student fees have been repealed. The Chancellor's Child Care Services fee was repealed in 2019 because of student government. It was also created by student government. So it was like one of those situations. But the point is, I categorically will not accept any opinion that the Senate allocation of the student fees is in any world less than valuable than any of the other delegated authorities given to student government. The treasurer did mention this, but I want to really elaborate that in my time as student government, there's been a pervasive ideology that the Senate doesn't matter, and that it is second to other branches. And I'm tired of that. Every senator spends dozens of hours of their life coming to frankly boring meetings to hear from people about their jobs and to do the work of the student body. And that is work that deserves to be respected and to be taken seriously. And the Finance Committee chair in particular does dozens, if not hundreds of hours of work just to make the finance process work. They have to write the entire budget bill. Prior to that, all of the individual subsequent and budget and subsequent and secondary appropriations bill, we are talking 300 individual bills had to be written by the Finance Committee chair. They are the ones who work with the treasurer to make sure that the money flows, that student organizations can spend their funds. They are the ones who lobbied endlessly to bring changes to CUSO so that students can actually access their funding. So yeah, I will not accept any statement that in any way applies that the work of the Senate is less valuable. The work that all of us do is, I would argue, equally valuable. And in many ways, we are under-recognized by this university for the work that we do. To the statement that honor system saves university a lot of money, that's true. The Senate saves university a ton of money. If the university had to run the entire allocations process themselves, they would have to hire tons of staff, full-time staff to run that process. I can speak to some universities where they do run these systems through university administrative processes, and those are not good. Student organizations go to boards composed of full-time salary employees who do not care about student organizations and who make determinations based on formulas that they are given by university administrators that do not take anything into account beyond that formula. That is not a system I would ever like to see at this university. And it is very important that it's just very important that we recognize the work that goes into making that possible. It is very important that we do not denigrate the work of the Senate Finance Committee or of the Senate under any circumstances. I apologize if I was very forceful. I just want to make it clear that that not just the Senate, but no one here should denigrate any other person for their work, because it is all important. That is all I have to say. Thank you, Chair Forbes, for recognizing me.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. Senator Fiore.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna echo some of the speaker's points with just some like additional points of reasoning. So yeah, Senator Guskowitz claimed that members of the honor system do more for university function than the treasurer and chair of the finance committee, and that what the finance committee does is not as important. I just want to say that that claim is wholly incorrect. I think that we all are doing extremely valuable work, and frankly, Senator, it is a little disappointing for me to hear you belittle the work that not only I and other members of this committee do, as well as the chair, but also yourself. We come in, we spend hours in meetings, ensuring that members of student organizations who are putting on events that are exceedingly important get their funding and can put on those programs that serve not only just the students of this of UNC, but the broader community. I think that is highly important work, and something that we should not minimize in light of the honor system. Treasurer Grodzki additionally brought up a really crucial point that this money is coming from somewhere, student fees. And that is exactly what the finance committee is allocating. It is perfectly reasonable and acceptable that these student fees should go to the services and the people that aid their allocation, which is the finance committee. And it's a complete stretch to say that a position that does not aid their allocation, which is where this money is coming from, deserves more of these funds than the people distributing them. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fiore. Vice Chair Alexander.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair Forbes. I think from what we're seeing, I would agree that we can say that everyone in student government who is on this list as being competent in some way is giving an is equally valuable and is important to be compensated accordingly. But I just think that if we agree with this, then we can say that we should still compensate summer staff, AG staff, and honor court members, while still providing compensation that is adequate for the finance chair, or the treasurer, or whatever. If we reduce the stipends of, say, the finance chair, as previously they were not compensated, or the treasurer who received a double, whose compensation was doubled, we're still recognizing their value and we're not denigrating the work that they do, but we're still just compensating the honor court members and the attorney general staff in the best way that we can. As again, it's distributed among so many different attorneys, defense counsels, investigative counsels, honor court members, that individually they're receiving far less than finance chair, the treasurer, or the vice president, or whoever else on this list. For us to say that we're all equal is one thing, but then to not compensate the honor system for that equal work that they're doing, it just is inconsistent with the values that we are preaching. As student government, we have to be representative of the entire student body and the student government, and I think we're neglecting the honor system time and time again. And while I think the ultimate solution would be to work with the university on a way to compensate honor system in a fair manner, I think we can still do our part by allocating some more money for the summer staff, for attorney general and the honor court alike. If that means reducing the funds that we give current in the current bill to the finance chair or the treasurer or the vice president, speaker, whoever, then so be it. Because I think to some extent, cuts have to be made. Like Treasurer Grodzki said, it is a zero-sum game. The money has to come from somewhere. And we can reduce their stipends while still respecting the massive amounts of work they put into student government and the fact that we are all co-equal members of student government. All of our work is valuable and should be compensated. While we cannot give money to everyone for their hard work, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't compensate the summer staff for the honor system. Like, and for me as the vice chair of the finance committee, while I do not do all of the work that the finance chair does, I still preside over just as many committees as the finance chair, and yet I am uncompensated. And that is perfectly fine. I don't work for the money, but that is just the compromise that has to be made given our limited funds. But to say that the honor system staff, again, AG staff or honor court members shouldn't be compensated at all in the summer, given the higher workload they have, just does not seem fair, just, sufficient, adequate, whatever adjectives you want to use. But ultimately, the money has to come from somewhere. If that means you have to make cuts from the finance chair or the treasurer, or again, in these other positions, then I think that is a move that you have to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Alexander. Chair Pollack.
Thank you. Am I still allowed to speak on this?
Yes.
I do believe that the finance system is, again, one of the main university functions of student government. And I'm frankly a little shocked to see members of the Senate that disagree with that. I would also like to say that finance committee members are an integral part of this, from staffing hearings to various states of help with the process. I know people that are treasurers for student organizations on campus that know members of this committee and rely on them to help them through the finance process. Individual members of the finance committee are not stipend under this bill. Everybody relating to a university function, which is, again, I believe most members of student government, should not be given a stipend. There's just simply not enough money for that. There are plenty of people that do very important work for the university that are not eligible for stipends, or simply for the fact that there is a limited and lesser amount of money in the total stipends fund, should not get a stipend, to prioritize the members of kind of student government leadership, if you will, that do perform these functions. And I think that's something we should all keep in mind. Again, as O&A chair, I believe that I do very important work for this university. And as a member of the Senate, I believe I do very important work for this university, but individual senators should not be stipend. I just think that, again, we should keep in mind that also Senate approval of members is a good level of oversight, to ensure that nobody kind of hires staff in order to give them stipend money. It's an extra layer of approval through the process just to make sure that there's no corruption or anything like that. Not that I am saying that anybody present at this meeting or involved at UNC would do things like this, but you should always plan for the worst. It's incredibly important. There's one stipend that is not Senate approved. Finance chair and speaker are both elected by the Senate. The one that's not Senate approved is student body president, but they are elected by the student body directly. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Chair Pollack. Senator Jessup again.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, I share the sentiments, at least partially, of literally everyone who's already spoken before. First, I do want to redirect here. We heard in public comment Attorney General Matthew talk about the email that he got from Chair Pollack. And Chair Pollack did say send this to summer court members and undergraduate honor court, any undergraduate deputy student attorney generals. But then Matthew then also asked the question, I'll read verbatim what Matthew said. He said, I will forward this to my deputies. Summer councils are essentially whoever is available to continue working during the summer. Who receives a stipend depends on who it is that year, which makes sense. Does someone need to fill out a form for this position? And then Chair Pollack responds, this is great information to go. You're all good, thank you. So I think, like, for us to also get back to a previous point, I don't think we can, in full faith, and I don't feel good about saying that no summer court or summer honor court potential person getting paid didn't fill out this form, because I think there might have been a miscommunication there. Matthew did say, is there someone that needs to fill out this form? And Chair Pollack maybe misconstrued the question a little bit because it was a little bit vague, but did say, you're all good, thank you. So with that being said, I want to say I don't think we should leave summer honor court people out for compensation. Like, I think that's fair. Like, there might have been miscommunications, and so I want to hold that to the side for now. Additionally, once again, and Speaker Gary, you were right on the money. I think other people also talked about, like, how a main function of the Senate is to finance student organizations. It is a major part, which is what we can clearly see effective here in the stipend bill. However, while I agree that this is needed, definitely, especially for finance chair, and probably even a little bit more for treasurer as well. We can't do that and also say compromise when there is 0 for some. So I would like to ask, I guess I'll specifically ask Treasurer Grotsky, in your mind, is there a number that we can increase treasurer stipend to, but it be less than the 4,000 it is? Because we've said previously, like, this is so important, but we've also said previously, like, you can't really look at workload per hour because then you get a poop show, for lack of a better term. So, like, Treasurer Grotsky, is there a number? Because it was 2,100 last year. And I agree that it's probably a little bit low. Is there a number in between 2,100 and that 4,000 that you that would be for next year? Is there any number?
Am I being asked to reply? Do I have a right of reply? I don't know how this works.
Surely, right? Can we let him reply? Do I need to make a motion? I also don't know how this works.
Motion
Whatever
would be made.
Yeah.
Right. That would actually, I think I can answer also. I can combine my answer with what I had to say on this. I'll be honest. I don't know. I'm a pretty well off person. And I have never needed my stipend. I have always donated my stipend to charity. So I'm not going to say like there's a number that we can need, but in terms of, like, again, let's divide this up into the 3 delegated authorities that student government has here. Student discipline, we can say we have the student conduct, student finances, student representation, and then also appointment to university boards. There are 2 officers representing the entirety of the student finances delegated authority in this bill. They are paid a combined $8,030. There are, I can't count it because it's not really a fixed number, but how many officers, but in total, officers, like stipends for officers representing the student conduct function are allocated $20,950. The idea that it will never appear acceptable to me, and I don't want to speak for other members of the committee, but based on what Senator Pollack and Senator Fiore, I hope I resemble your feelings. It will never be acceptable to further increase that disparity. It's preposterous, frankly. The idea that every single person in the honor system, beyond the most important executive officers, deserve a stipend, and indeed many do, but no one related to any of the other delegated authorities deserve the same, is absurd to me. So no, I don't think there is a number on my behalf that I would feel comfortable with endorsing in any case.
Yeah, that's fair. And so I guess I'd like to ask feedback from all our other voting members here. Is there a world where we can agree on to decrease because we're just going to shoot it straight, right? The sentiments here are 2 stipends, and we're looking at treasurer and finance chair, and they are so freaking important. I want to say another word, sorry. And they do a lot of work. So other people voting on this bill, is there a world where we could ever decrease, whether that number be $1, whether that number be $1,000, $1,500? Is there a world where we can agree to still give a treasurer an additional stipend and let the finance chair match that stipend? And when I say additional stipend, I mean compared to last year. So it'd be above that $2,100. And give that finance chair to match it and give the difference and split it up between honor court chair and attorney general. Like, because if we're not, we're running in circles. That's where I'm really.
To the chair, am I allowed to respond to Senator Jessup's question? I'm also unclear on the procedure for this.
Before any response, I'd like to invoke a right of reply. Oh, Chair Forbes, you're muted.
Yes, as a non-member of the committee, a motion would need to be made.
Can I hear Senator Fiore? Then can I make the motion for you, Chair Pollock?
I'm fine with that if the committee is.
Senator Fiore.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate your like willingness to communicate more on this and sort of like break the traditional flow of this. I think it's more helpful than I could say members of the US Congress are. But yeah, so I think that I think I'm gonna I think that if we did this based on university vitality with the three functions that Senator Grodzki laid out, it never explicitly states anywhere that either one of those three functions is more or less important than the other. So like if we followed it by the book, we would actually be giving members of the honor system less money if we were doing it completely evenly. But I think that we recognize that like we can move beyond the book to recognize like that yes, what they're doing is important. How we are allocating this is not based on how important we think they are, but university vitality. So I think that given the disparity it's currently at, I would not support any amendment. I think that's what you're hinting at, to change this bill to increase that disparity, given all three are laid out in our governing texts as being equally valuable to university function. I just I don't know. I think it's very important to be by the book when it comes to something like this. Cold and calculating and political, as Treasurer Grodzki stated the first time he commented. So yeah, in that case, I don't think I would support that amendment.
Oh yeah, and thank you for being straight up, because I mean that's how it is, you know. At this time, I'd like to suspend the rules and motion to hear or give the right for Chair Pollitt to respond to my previous statement.
Second.
Without objection. Senator or Chair Pollock.
Thank you. Not only do I find it wildly inappropriate to try to attack my credibility and say that I lied before this committee. Personally, I find that just incredibly inappropriate from a decorum perspective and a personal insult perspective. That email chain did prove what I was wondering about, which is that there is no set number of people that are summer honor court members. So any kind of stipend for that would have to take that into account, that there could theoretically be a large amount or a small amount depending on the year, is what I interpreted the Attorney General's statement to be. That would complicate the stipends process a lot in terms of figuring out a good number for a maximum or a minimum of each position within the summer honor court, and figuring out if we stipend summer honor court members, which positions specifically apply for that. Does that apply to, and which ones it doesn't? I haven't heard any debate around that, because the honor court is a fairly large institution. And to simply say that everybody involved in summer would get a stipend seems to me to be unnecessarily broad. And again, it would be the Senate giving money to people that the Senate did not approve of, which again is another requirement under the text.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to clarify, I didn't say you're lying. I was saying like there was a miscommunication. Like AG Matthew did say, like, does someone still need to fill out this form? And you said you were all good, thank you, like verbatim. That's why I said like miscommunication. I know it's email over vague, so I want to clarify that too. I really think like there might have been some like ambiguity there. So I guess where I'm at here is, and thank you, like I guess Senator Fiore, you did say by the book, and I think Speaker Gary said something very like important here. There is no book. We can't refer to a book because like 2016, if we go back to 2016, it's been all over the place. Like if we want to truly go by the book, we would look at the previous stipends, and they were stipends last summer. And so like I'm trying to figure out a way like we could truly compromise here, because truth be told, no matter what number we compromise, the honor court's going to be very disappointed. And like Treasurer Grotsky said, that's a mark of a good compromise. But right now, the number's 0. So like, is there anything, whether that number be instead of 4,000, 3,000, and then we give 1,000 to honor court chair and then 1,000 to attorney general? That's something. There's about 10 staff members each. That at least gives them $100. Like that's something. I don't even think that's what last summer. But you know, like, is there any way we can take anything out of it? And that's like an open invitation to all other voting members. Like, please answer.
Sorry, what's the procedure in response to this?
I'm sorry, Senator Jessup, is this a question directed at an individual or a rhetorical one for the committee?
I sort of both. Like, I don't want to sit here and say every single individual voting, right? That's just sort of weird. But like, anybody, like, I really want to know, like, is there room to make progress from like anyone else voting? Because it, like, thank you, Senator Fiore. You were very straight up and you said, and I agree with the sentiment too, that like we have like 3 by our code, we have 3 responsibilities, and funding's one of them. So like that's very valid, you know. And so I wanted to hear from like other people as well. Like, is there any movement at all? And is that, can we also get any movement from any of the other spots? You know, so
Is there an individual in this committee who has a response specifically to that question rather than an individual point of discussion? Senator Fiore.
Yeah, so I want to address the I want to answer that point by addressing one of your earlier ones. You mentioned that to be by the book would be to base it off of past ways of funding. But the issue is that, like, if you use that reasoning year after year, there's no room for growth. If you use that reasoning, then like the finance chair would not receive anything. When I think, as many individuals have pointed out, many like executive officials holding different titles that the finance chair does as much work as them. I think that if additionally, if we did this following past precedent, it would mean that the 2021 appropriations wouldn't have actually given members of the honor system their summer stipend. So it seems that precedent is continually changing. And the speaker did mention that we have to look at this year after year and base it annually off of what most seems fair. And so in that case, I think that submitting a version of this bill to the full Senate that is not amended would be doing that and trying to do it objectively. Again, like, deciding who gets what money is really extraordinarily difficult. Again, we all are important. That's not what this bill is about. It's about a code that is unclear, and frankly about a stipends process that shouldn't be a thing in the first place. But we don't really have time to get that through, given we're meeting on Tuesday in less than 48 hours. So I think that if anything, this is highlighted that this is not like something that we can do year after year. I don't think we can have fights over who deserves what. It bogs us down and, quite frankly, distracts us from the other university functions we're supposed to be serving and performing. And so given all of that, I think that we are tasked with either making some progress or making none at all. And by not, in this case and in this world, I would be very strongly opposed to widening that gap.
yeah, yeah, and and honestly, full transparency, I agree with you about if the whole email thing is not in there, I almost agree with you. But Chair Pollitt cited the main, or like a main reason, is that no one filled out the form. And when asked, do they need to fill out the form, he said, no, you're good. Like, I want to know, it sounds like they weren't even considered at all. That's what it sounds like. And I reject the notion that this is fair in any means if we have someone that wasn't even considered.
So I think that there are two opposing strains of reasoning here. And I think that in the case of disagreeing with one line of reasoning to get to the end result, that doesn't necessarily invalidate the other strain of reasoning. Does that make sense? Like if you're cutting off this one, it doesn't cut off the end result because you still got the other chain, like trying to support it.
With you on
So
everything.
yeah, I don't know. That's how I view it.
Like I said, if it wasn't for like, if you take the form out of it, I am pretty eye to eye with you. That's tough. I'll yield the rest of my time. I'd like to hear what other people think.
Thank you. Before we continue, I do want to make a note to the committee that we are coming up on 2.5 hours in this committee meeting. While I certainly welcome all discussion that members of this committee have on the topic of USB 144, I do ask that we are mindful of the time. It is a Sunday night, and that we move closer to motions and referrals in the near future. But with that, Vice Chair Alexander.
Yes, thank you, Chair Forbes. And yes, I agree. This is going on to be quite lengthy, but I just wish that we reframe the discourse here, as I think there are some misunderstandings with how this whole stipend situated for the honor system is working. Like I keep hearing this point of the 45% figure, that 45% of the stipend is going to the honor system, and that there's some disparity, or even like an overrepresentation within the funding for them. But I just have to vehemently disagree with that. Like for one thing, the point that myself and others are advocating for is that the money goes to the summer stipend, and that money is largely not going to the senior leadership of the honor system, but to all these individual members. There is no increasing disparities. Again, any individual member is largely getting pennies compared to what the other members of student government, like again, the treasurer or the vice president or whoever is getting. And that is a good thing that it's mostly going to these rank and file members, as the point is that the vast majority of the money should be almost incentivizing people to stay on and to fairly compensate them for their work during the summer. We want to ensure that there are more investigative councils, more defense councils, more honor court members, so that we can reduce the individual caseload on any individual person and to reduce the stresses and the burden that they have. It honestly is unfair just not compensate them whatsoever. And again, in the spirit of compromise, we should still allocate something to them, even if it means it has to come from other members of student government. As again, while it is unacceptable that say the treasurer it gets not as much as they should, or that the finance chair got nothing up to this point, for the honor system to get nothing for the summer likewise is unfair. And I think even if that means you have to cut these other stipends, that is still just considering the fact that again, overall any individual person is getting so much within the rest of student government. And this whole process is necessarily going to lead to unfair outcomes for everyone, as again, like the treasurer can't get as much as they need, the finance chair or whoever other members. Like we also cut a lot of EBO members, like secretary, chief of staff, director of state and external affairs. It is going to lead to unjust outcomes, or at least not fully adequate, but it is completely unjust to not give anything to the summer staff. So that means we have to cut, like say, the finance committee finance chairman by 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever, then I think that is something that should be done. As I completely respect the work that say Chair Forbes is doing, I see the work that you do. You put in far, like just a great amount of time into student government, but I think it is equally unjust to not compensate the summer staff. And as we have repeatedly heard from the members of AG staff, and again, while honor court was not represented here as much, again, even the members of honor court, they both deserve some sort of stipend for the summer. To give them absolutely nothing is just, it goes against our purpose of funding things that serve university functions. If that's the criteria we're going with, then we're not satisfying that criteria by not giving them anything. And while I respect Chair Pollock's methodology for why he gave, say, 4,000 to the finance committee chair. I would agree that they deserve some parity with the other people, like the treasurer and whatnot. I still think that in the end, we will have to cut something from these higher level people in student government to ensure that at least some money goes to the summer staff. So I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alexander. Next up would be Senator Guskowitz.
Yes. Thank you for that. I just want to respond to former comments about me that were said, and I want to just respond, and I just want to say I apologize if my temper was high, and I apologize if I said something out of pocket. I did not in any way mean to belittle what we do here. It is very important what we do here, and I think there's a reason why we're all staying up at 10 o'clock debating this for 2.5 hours, doing the very thing that we're talking about, which is to give funding. And I don't mean to, in my previous comment, mean to belittle what we do. And so thank you, Senator Fiore, for pointing that out. I did not mean to belittle what we do here. And I thank you, Senator Gary, for pointing that out. I did not mean to belittle what we're doing here. And I apologize if that was the error that I, or the connotations that I tried or brought to my discussion, because that is not what I meant to say. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I apologize if what I said was any way demeaning to this university, because there's a reason why I'm here, and I love this university very much. And I just want people at this university who give a lot to this university, even whenever they're not in session, that are spending hours and hours in the middle of summer, and hours in the middle of school time, during university, like the semesters, getting the pay that they rightfully deserve. And I once again want to go back to what Senator Jessup and Senator Alexander have been highlighting, and say that I think there are very important aspects within this discussion that we need to just once again go back to. I've sat in the 27 hours this past semester, and the semester beforehand, listening to all the allocations of the hearings with Senator Forbes. And that's only one of the ends. I don't see the back end, and I do want to say that I really appreciate everything that Forbes does.
Is that all, Senator Guskowitz, or are you cutting out? Senator Guskowitz, are you there? With that, I'm going to move to Senator Jessup.
Cal hasn't spoken yet. We can let Cal.
All right, if you yield. Senator Baruch.
Hey y'all. I'm gonna keep this pretty brief. I'm just gonna focus on one aspect of this, which has been, I think, perpetually highlighted, which is the stipends given to the finance chair and given to the treasurer. I am acquaintances or friends with both Chair Forbes and Treasurer Grotsky. I knew the Bast finance chair. I knew Logan last year as well. And I legitimately cannot speak to work done by other members of student government. I I'm relatively insular in the Senate. My job doesn't require me to go into other branches too often. However, I can attest to the fact that Speaker Forbes or Chair Forbes and Treasurer Grodsky have two of the hardest jobs that I know of. In really any sense, like even if I compare it to stuff outside of student government. I had to chair some of the subcommittees for the finance committee last session. It sucked. Like when you're a member of the committee, you can kind of relax every once in a while, take a break, rest your eyes, do a little bit of work. Even just focusing on the work they do during these meetings, they are paying attention for like 6-7 hours straight, thinking, what does this deserve? How much money do these people get? It is the process, along with honor court, that is most thought of by students, right? Like almost any student on this body is part of a student organization. Almost all of those student organizations at some point have to go through Chair Forbes and Treasurer Grodsky. I cannot speak to how much I think other members deserve. I was not part of the interviews for O&A, but I think it would be utterly unacceptable to drop how much these people make, given how much work they have to put into the stuff that they do. I'm a chair of the Senate. I do some work. I do absolutely nothing compared to how much work Chair Forbes and Treasurer Grodsky have to put into this stuff. Right? When they sign up for these positions, they sign up for hundreds of hours of work on the back end, making sure that this process runs properly. And under no means should that be demeaned by dropping the amount that they receive even more than compared to the other vital university functions that are already done. I think that if compromises are going to be made, those compromises need to be made elsewhere. It would just be utterly unacceptable. And I think it would just, again, push into that idea that this process is not as important as other things, right? Whereas it affects the vast majority of students on this campus. If we did not have somebody as efficient as in both of these positions, like it would be absolute, for lack of a better word, hell for these student organizations, right? Like Treasurer Grodsky on his own kind of tackled this mess of a system and worked with the university administrators to get this reimbursement working. Chair Forbes, like was mentioned, has to spend dozens to hundreds of hours on the back end messaging the student organizations, writing these bills, getting these things passed, and then sitting through these meetings and actively participating during every single minute. That work should not be demeaned.
So I have a motion that I think might be able to solve both problems. So I'm going to go ahead and move to amend this bill so that sections F and G be lowered by $4,725 and 1,000 funds be created for summer honor court and the Attorney General staff. So this way, just sort of laid out for the senators so they know what they're voting on, to sort of synthesize it with the debate. We wouldn't be increasing that gap, but we would also be ensuring that the summer honor system is going to be funded.
Okay. So if I hear this correctly, the motion would be to reduce the stipends for the Attorney General and the Chair of the Honor Court both to zero, take $1,000 from undergraduate members of the Board of Elections, and then appropriate $1,000 for summer members of the Honor Court. Is this accurate?
No, sorry, I meant 1,000.
1,000 what?
Dollars.
From where to where?
From the initial amount. So it's currently allocated 4,725, lower to 3,725.
From each of them?
Correct.
Okay, so this motion would reduce, oh wait, let me go into suggest mode. that'll make it easier. Reduce the Attorney General and Chair of the Honor Court stipend from 4,725 each to 3,725 each. And reappropriate $1,000 for summer honor corps members. Is there a second or an objection on this motion?
Second.
Can I?
Point of information.
Point of information.
Yes.
So we're dropping the amount appropriated by 2,000 and reappropriating 1,000 elsewhere.
Yes, this would put the top line number at 4,600,250.
Okay.
I would like to remove my second. I thought it was appropriating the full $2,000 to the summer honor court members.
Yeah, also point of information. So is 2,000 being removed net from their stipends for the Attorney General chair, and then only 1,000 is being allocated total for the summer honor system?
No, sorry. For clarification, that was $2,000
Okay.
for that. So 1,000 from each, 2,000 total. So removing 2,000, adding 2,000 to other pot.
All right. Okay, so with this motion,
Wait, sorry, I'm so sorry. Furthermore, given the letter in the chat, I would also like to add in the BOE chair, so that everybody's voices are heard in this. I'm very sorry. Numbers are hard, y'all. So yeah, removing $400 from that per what the BOE chair stated in her letter and adding $400 to the summer stipends.
okay, so the final effect of this motion would move the stipends for the Attorney General and Chair of the Honor Court to $3,725 each, remove the Chair of the Board of Elections additional $400 stipend, and appropriate summer members of the honor system $2,400 total. Yes. Is there a second or an objection to this motion?
Second.
Is there a thing as a temporary objection? Like, can I like ask like 2 more questions? Like, can we hold it? Like, is that a thing? I don't have it.
No, so once an amendment is made, we enter directly into voting procedure.
Yeah, so
So you would have to object or
to discuss, right?
Hmm?
So I have to object if I wanted to talk about it more.
Yes, we would vote on it and then
like where this is going, but I want to like just for clarity object, add maybe a couple things or like, is that okay? So I'll object.
Okay, then with that we enter into voting procedure.
There's a big problem here.
Let's get through voting and then we can discuss this.
Yeah, as a point of information, you were only seeking the third of seconds to move into consideration of the amendment. You're now in as though it's like questioning or discussion. You don't need to move straight into a vote.
So are we splitting it up between? I think we should split the 20. Is it 2,400 that we have? I think we should split it up between first off, like, because they do different things. The Attorney General and Honor Court chair, 1,200, 1,200, right? So they can give their respective staffs.
So as the amendment is laid out, this is for summer members of the honor system, which is the system as a whole.
So who does the authority go to then to distribute it? That's why I want to split it up to make it clear, like who actually gets to distribute funds. The easy answer, like I feel like the easy answer is just saying 1,200 for Honor Court chair, 1,200 for Attorney General.
So I moved to split it evenly.
Okay.
That's not where I wanted the whole thing done, but they have something. I think that was very fair. So I'll withdraw my objection if that's taken for me as a amendment.
So this amendment to the motion is made friendly. Okay, so then in that case, there would be no objection. And with that, the motion passes. Okay. So you can see in the bill on the agenda, the updated allocation amount. Are there further questions or motions on the floor?
Motion.
Yes.
I moved previous question, seeing no further discussion.
All right. Is there a
POI,
second?
is this a motion to refer the bill?
Yeah, oh, yes.
How favorably, without objection, etc.
Yes, is this a motion to report favorably?
Point of information.
Yes.
It says insert Senate number, Senate of the undergraduate student body. Do we need to change that to 105 before we submit it?
All that will be handled by the clerk, don't worry.
Okay, sounds good. I just didn't know if
Yeah.
But
how is this is this a motion to refer the bill? How so, Senator Fiore?
Oh, apologies. I move to refer the bill favorably to the full Senate.
All right, is there a second on that motion?
Seconds.
Is there an objection? Seeing none. All right. With that, okay. That concludes our one item of legislation on the agenda tonight. The USB 105-144 has been reported favorably to the full Senate with amendment. Thank you all for spending quite a lovely 2 hours and 50 minutes in committee on your Sunday night. It means a lot to the work of the Senate and our whole student government. So if there are no final questions, comments, concerns, we stand adjourned at 10:19 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, we stand adjourned at 10:19 p.m. Thank you all very much for your time, attention, and hard work in our student government.
Thank you to the Finance Committee and all of those who attended.
Thank you all.